Welcome back to ScoreVision Advantage, a podcast where we share the latest happenings in sports tech and fan engagement. I'm your host, Ashley Peterson. For years, ScoreVision has been known for its game day software, but we also like to stay up to date on other technologies that encourage athlete development. Though ScoreVision doesn't offer all the technologies we plan on discussing today, we do try our best to find ways to display the information that these technologies can present. To shed some light on the emerging realm of practice and player performance technologies, we are joined by ScoreVision's Director of Technology, Ben Nourse.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, welcome back.
It's great to be here.
This is exciting. We're finally back with our podcast.
I know. It's been too long.
I know, and on a very fun topic. So today, talking about practice technologies, first and foremost, I think I want to start off by just kind of getting an idea of how we've seen things develop over the years, because you've been in this industry for quite some time and really at like the big boom of, I would say, the evolution of sports tech in a new way.
Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting to see is there's a lot of this technology has been around for quite a while, but what we're seeing now is that it's been around long enough that it's becoming affordable to what is largely ScoreVision's audience, which is high schools, smaller colleges, whereas some of this stuff, you know, kind of like they always say automotive technology starts with the F1 team, starts with the NASCAR team, and makes it down to the consumer cars at some point. Similar, we're seeing that now with body trackers and all of the stuff that we're talking about today, where it was out of the reach of most people, most teams, until the last few years, and now it's becoming a lot more approachable or affordable, or it's coming into the realm of possibility. So some cool stuff happening.
I know, it's super exciting, and it's just interesting to see it kind of trickle down and what that looks like, because I feel like only recently have there been a lot of policy changes for even college sports, and now just kind of seeing that it continues to go down. It's like, what's next?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. As Director of Technology for ScoreVision, obviously, your role's quite diverse. You obviously oversee our product development, but also just naturally, the thing that you are best at, I will say, is you're constantly learning and keeping your pulse on new things. But as an AD, I could see how a lot of these new technologies could be a little bit daunting because you don't know a lot about them and you don't know how to make decisions. So I wanted to ask you, how do you sort of keep tabs on what's coming out in sports technology and kind of evaluate, I guess?
Yeah, so I don't know. It's easy for me to say. I'm kind of in a privileged position, right? Like when it comes to that, because of my role here and because of our company itself, a lot of times people are coming to us to talk about these things. So I could see it being a lot more difficult for somebody on the flip side of that. I definitely, this sounds silly. We get all of the athletic director magazines, and I make it a point to go through all of that stuff. You know, everybody who has a new technology wants you to know about it, so they're out there pushing it. A lot of this stuff I get through just general technology because of my interests. You know, it's just general technology. Press tends to cover sports technology as well because it's compelling for a lot of crossover. I wish I had an easy answer to it. Yeah. I think one of the good ways to get a concentrated serving of that is to attend the conferences, the National Athletic Directors Conferences, things like that. We also tend to do Infocom or the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters Conferences, because even though neither of those, the primary focus is technology or is sports technology, they always have a helping of it because it is such a big part of both general technology and broadcast. So.
Speaking of which, just a little plug, we will be at the National Athletic Directors Conference this year.
And when you say we, you don't just mean ScoreVision, right?
Yeah.
You and I will both be there this year, so that'll be kind of cool.
Which is going to be so much fun, and we can't wait. And ScoreVision is going to have a nice big booth this year, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm excited to kind of see everyone for the first time in a little while. Okay, so before we kind of spin off into everything else, I want to say I tried my best to kind of break this down from the interest that I think that a lot of our athletic directors have expressed to us. And the very first one is segment timers. But before we go into segment timers, I'm curious about kind of, I guess, what you think about the next boom of technology when it comes to practice softwares specifically, because we have an app called Practice App.
Right.
And really that app was developed specifically for football practice.
Right.
And it has a segment timer built in, but do you see that us integrating that into our current software will transition that a bit further for other teams?
Yeah, so the football practice software that we have it has a very opinionated way about running football practice, and the good thing is that seems to be the way a lot of professional teams, a lot of college teams run it, and I think that it trickles down even into the high school practice. It's all the same. But it does tend to require a lot of work. Like it automates a lot of things for you. But if you have play cards, if you're not used to digitizing, your X's and O's, you have to have somebody to do that. So it can tend to be need a lot more attention than certain groups are willing to give it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it requires a little bit of management. So we have been looking at bringing in just a segment timer, right? And then all that requires is you name it what you want to name it. So if you break you got your defensive coaches coaching on one end of the field and your offensive coaches coaching on the other end of the field, and then you for 10 minutes and then you're ready to swap, we allow you to the plan is to just have you be able to put a name in there, have a duration in there, and if you have a typical regimen that you follow where every Monday you're doing one set of intervals or one set of practices, you can save that. And so it's kind of like the middle ground between, just a digital interval timer that you might have sitting on a table in your volleyball practice or something like that, and the full-blown practice software that we've developed for, I'll say, either professional or college use.
Yeah. Okay, you can tell me no, but I have a second question to that, which is you mentioned the player cards, which is part of what Practice App provides. But I do want to know, when talking about like inserting a segment timer, is that going to be layout based, or are you able to switch to a layout that still allows for you to show player cards and have the segment timer?
So, it would be just another, in our system, the way we would view it is just another layout. And so you'd be able to swap back and forth between them.
Okay.
So that's what we're saying is I think we can get 90% of the functionality of our dedicated practice software by just giving people the individual building blocks and letting them use them the way that they want to use them.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's just more flexibility and, being able to kind of piece together what parts you want and what parts you don't, which is really what ScoreVision tends to do anyways with a lot of our features and technology is you can start entry level or you can build it. I find the player cards a really interesting thing because part of what we're going to talk about today later on is a little bit of understanding replays as well.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about Capture currently only allows video. But if you had a player card and you were drawing on something, whether or not you would want to put an image or something up there, I don't know. Regardless, I think it's interesting to think about how you could integrate different mediums of media into your practices to make you more efficient. So I'm curious about what technologies have you seen, like Practice App, expanding for other sports? And can you think of any that come to mind as far as maybe basketball or volleyball or?
Yeah. So are you specifically talking about tools around the organization of a given practice or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think not necessarily in that regard. I can't think of anything offhand. I've got we've got some people using like heart rate monitors, things like that. And then you're going into the realm of wearables. As far as actually coordinating a practice and displaying it in venue on the boards, I don't.
Can't think of any.
No.
I was curious more about like the basketball ones because I know like one of our customers that uses ScoreVision LE, they use something that's called Dr. Dish, I think is what it's called. But it's where it basically like tracks the amount of shots that go through, which I guess is a little bit different.
I see exactly
than
what you're
planning.
talking about. Okay, yeah, because I was thinking more on the planning side, but yeah, so it's tracking. It's like a
It's like player
robot
performance, I guess, more.
But it's actually more of a performance thing. Yeah, and so then I would say that does fall into like, from a physical training perspective, or just that if a device like that has, what we love is when they have a web-based, analytics, because that's very easy for us to get up there. And there's a lot of technologies like that now where just by their nature they're either they Bluetooth back to a computer for that, and then it's great. That's similar to what I was talking about with like the heart rate monitors, where a lot of those products tend to have a dashboard, right?
Yeah.
That a coach or a PE instructor can have up. Well, that's very easy for us to then get up on the board so that your athletes or your students can see it there. And not only is it informational and it's helps with the instructional side of it, but it's kind of cool for the individuals to be able to see.
Yeah, it is. And it's really interesting to see kind of all these different versions of that pop up for different sports. Like I know baseball kind of has something a little bit similar. As far as like replays go, I can think of so many different companies that kind of do this. One of them being in our own backyard, of course, Huddle. Yep. I know there's Pixelot, and I'm sure that there are others. But as far as like the integration of that into practice, what tips would you provide to an AD or coach who is looking to use a product like that and find out whether or not it's even capable of being implemented into their system?
Yeah, so there's really kind of two things you're talking about there, and Huddle kind of crosses over both of them. Some of the focus is more on the capturing the footage and having the automated camera footage, which Huddle now offers their own version of. And then there's more of the clip management and analytics side of it. I think Huddle's obviously king on that one. And as far as integrating that into the practice itself, I know that we get a lot of questions about just getting that content on the displays, whether it's a television that's been linked into your ScoreVision system or if it's the large LED display itself, that we can figure out there's multiple different ways to get that footage up there so that a coach isn't like literally like hanging over their phone, over an iPad. So I think a large part of the questions we see are about the usability of that, is making it easier for a coach to collaboratively review the footage that they've captured. And so that's always, having a large display is always a nice thing there.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a big part of the focus of those questions.
Yeah. As far as like the clip management goes, do you see anything as far as like there's a lot of softwares out there that are now using AI to do some of that clip management. Do you think that's something that could be coming in the future?
I think it's going to be huge. I think what you're going to see is I mentioned a little bit before about wearables, right? You're getting telemetry data from your players. Those systems can tend to be very pricey, right? In order to get precise location data inside of your venue, things like that, they need stationary sensors that need to be calibrated. There's different ways of doing it, and that's part of the reason why they're becoming more affordable, is because the actual technical management of the system itself is becoming more feasible for smaller groups to handle. But I think what you'll really see is that the actual wearable part of it or the sensor part of it will get dumber and dumber, and that visual assessment of, say, a pixel ladder huddle camera feed or a feed dedicated to those systems, the AI will analyze the video to figure out where the player was instead of needing the actual like accelerometer data from a sensor that's on the athlete's uniform.
Yeah.
And so I think both from a capability perspective, but more from an accessibility perspective, I think that's where the high school market and the smaller markets will see the advantages of AI first. Is not necessarily that the capabilities will blow the roof off, but you'll get the capabilities that the more expensive systems have without the cost layout.
Yeah, interesting. So kind of spinning off of that, once the clip management happens, once it's like broken down, for ScoreVision, as far as like a use case, it is possible that if I let's say I pulled down all my huddle footage and I have my different buckets for my different number of players, I could create collections within the producer and play through those collections if I was doing like an individual player's review of last game.
Yes, and I think depending on the service you're using, some of them can actually generate that clip as a single file, and that's really easy to use on your boards. Additionally, if you want to patch some of those together, we have playlists. We have video playlists that would allow you to just pre-configure that for a review session, for a tape review session, and just play through that.
Very interesting. Well, I'm excited to kind of see what the future of all that looks like, because I think AI is definitely a big conversation going on, I think, in general in technology, let alone the implications it's going to have on sports tech. Okay, as far as wearable technologies, which now we've mentioned a couple different times, obviously ScoreVision does not provide wearable technology at the moment, and I don't know that we ever really will. But we do a great job at trying to find ways to display some of that information. And I know that this sector of the sports tech industry is really starting to take off. We're seeing a lot more wearables come into high school sports, like you mentioned before. I know that also we're seeing a lot more, even just like interesting, I don't know if you'd consider this wearables, but when you think about like the coaching headsets and the player headsets within their, helmets and stuff like that, which is now becoming a big thing. And I think that's even being implemented on the field, I think, for high school football. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, could be false information.
I think you asked me and I looked it up and the answer was yes. I think
so too.
Of this season, the answer is yes. But
so we're seeing a lot more of that, which doesn't necessarily convey straight over. But I want to get your thoughts on how you kind of see wearable technology expanding.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that you think maybe we could keep an eye out for that could kind of be catapulting us into the future.
Yeah, and I think that crosses over with exactly what we were talking about. I think there's going to be several companies out there, either this year or next, that traditionally we would have associated with, a Power 5 conference team or a professional team or even a Premier League team in England, that are going to be coming out with more affordable versions that'll make it to our market. And while they may not have every single feature, it's going to be interesting to see how they can integrate with scoreboard data. One of the things we talk about a lot is because a lot of the data that those sensors can provide, those expensive sensors can provide, is around when something happened or what was triggered or what should an AI model be looking at a particular time. If you can integrate those systems with scoreboard data, it gives the AI a lot of clues in order to figure out exactly what's going on, and it's the kind of thing that you can get almost the same performance out of piecing stuff together as just being told the answer in the first place, and for a lot less money.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't actually ask or think of this until now, but as we're talking about this, it's also dawning on me that, like, we've been to a countless number of high school games. Really, all of us have at some point in time working for ScoreVision. And most often in the press box, there's maybe not nearly as much communication with a coaching staff member that's in the press box, like you see if it's an offensive coordinator
Right.
up in a press box in a college game.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if we're going to see kind of a transition of that same method as people have more access to technology to review game footage while it's happening and get more accurate assessments on player performance. Do you think that's possible in high school?
I hope that that's what happens. I think that's a very cool. I hadn't even thought about the expanding the headset technology being used into getting. I mean, we all see it in the NFL, right? The OC is always up in the booth, or or at the very least, they're interacting with people up in the booth. And I do think that it leads to a higher level of both. It leads to better feedback loops post game when you're doing your like I said, your film sessions, and better football. So I of course, I mean, when you say that this time of year, all I can think about is, oh yeah, that'll be cool when that hits the football stadium.
I know. It's going to be so much fun to kind of watch as all this happens, and not even to mention the fact that just in general, it's kind of an exciting but yet very, I think, intimidating time for high school sports and athletic directors. And we recognize that. Like, technology is a big thing to be integrating into your way of doing things and what your school can and cannot handle as far as staffing. There's a lot that an athletic director does. So let's leave with a little bit of a parting advice, if you will, on if this is something that's so new to you, if implementing, whether it's ScoreVision or something else, what would you say is good advice maybe for an AD as far as like taking the first step?
Well, first thing I'd say is don't FOMO into the first solution that's presented to you. Like I said, a lot of this is an evolving thing, especially as these either new companies who are new startups into the space, or kind of the companies that have been a while. This is the high school market may be as new to them as it is as the technology is to you. Like, you don't have to jump at the first one. We saw this a lot. I mean, like I said, Pixelot and Huddle, probably the big two in that space as far as the automated cameras showing, stitching together images and showing an automated view of your games. I think we probably talked to 15 or 20 other people, companies who were trying to get into that space. And I don't know where they're at now, right? And so you don't want to FOMO into grabbing the first feasible thing that comes to you. This as exciting as it is, this might actually be the time to let the dust settle out. Do what you're doing today. Keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening so that you're not missing out. We don't want you to miss recruits or something like that because you're not up to date. But take the time, take a deep breath, make an educated decision.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. I so appreciate your time and all of your knowledge. So
thank you, Ashley.